Hey there, welcome to the Kingdoms Trading Card Game YouTube channel, and in this video I am going to be doing deck profile for the Kingdom of Cludes. This kingdom came out in set 2, new designs, and you could say the leader of the kingdom, or at least for this deck, even though there aren't necessarily leaders in the game, is the Devotee of Cludes. This card was drawn by Skylar, and I have him in the foil edition. And so let's go ahead and jump into the profile video. Alright, so here is the Cludes deck. You can see on the cover of the deck is the Devotee of Cludes. Again, this card is drawn by Skylar. And let's go ahead and jump into the deck profile video. We'll go ahead and start with the Devotee of Cludes. This card was made for the purpose of having a card that has greater attack. Cludes cards are known for being pretty weak in terms of stats, but have good effects and abilities. So this is kind of their one chance of having high attack, unless you count Snore Day, which, though it's not super competitive, I do love that card, so that's why you will see it in this deck. But anyways, Devotee of Cludes, I run 2 of those. Next, I run 3 Cludes Ambushers. Pretty much you want to run almost every Cludes card that came out because they're all really good and work really well together. This has silence and also makes your spells cost cheaper, and Cludes has some of the best spells in the game in my opinion. Next, I have 3 copies of Cludes Warrior. Cludes Warrior is good because you have the Silence X ability, and then it also makes your opponent have -1 magicka, which that is one thing that the Cludes deck does, is it makes your opponent have a little bit less magicka while generating a lot of magicka for themselves. And they do have Silence, again, which is why Cludes is probably considered S tier in terms of kingdoms. Next, we have Garment Maker, which does have Silence, and this card is great for making your other Cludes battle cards better by giving you +200, +200. I actually really do like this card, and I'm always excited to get it out on the field. Next, I have 3 copies of Resource Manager. Resource Manager is definitely was a card that was not super well thought through. However, with a rule change, Gift 3 does not happen till the beginning of your counter phase, whereas this card used to just give you magicka right away when it came out on the field. So it still is good, but not as good as it used to be, and honestly, because of that, people are able to get it off the field before it's able to start generating the value that it's able to give you. Do run 3 of those. Next, I run 3 copies of Nomadic Soldier. I was building all these decks exclusively using the one kingdom, so for Cludes. So maybe there's a better phase 1 drop that could replace this, but because I'm using only Cludes and maybe some neutral cards if possible, that's why I have this one. But I still think this card is fairly good, and which is why I run 3 of these. Next, I run 3 copies of Enai the Scoutsman. As the game and time has went on, I have come to realize that this is a very good card, and this is quickly becoming one of my more favorite cards in the game because it allows you to combine twice up to 2 separate groups of battle cards, and then adds an additional 200 to that attack. So that can really generate some very potent damage if you're able to pull that off. And running 3 copies and him being so cheap, it's very doable. Next, I run 2 copies of Ats the Wrangler, and this is just simply to have a higher hitting Cludes card. You can search for a spell and play it for free, which is pretty good for this deck, but I just put it in there for some attack power. And then in terms of Cludes battle cards, I do round it off with Snore Day. He's a very expensive card. Even though Cludes can generate a lot of magicka, that still is a lot to try to spend. But I still love this card, and he does have a good effect by making Borum and Tannis cards cost +1 magicka, and he does have 900 attack, so it is fun being able to bring him. I was building this deck with the cards that I had available, and you're only allowed to run 2 Ula the Rebels, so I definitely put 2 of these guys in this deck because that is a very good card. I only have 1 Outpost Tower. I didn't have any Temple Teachers available, so I just wanted 1 card to be able to have some card draw ability, and then I do round off the battle cards with a Time Scribe. Next, in terms of spells, and this is why I partially feel okay not having a lot of card draw battle cards, it's because of a lot of the spells that I have, as well as tokens that you'll see. I don't have many tokens in this deck. I do run 3 Pillages. Pillage allows you to discard 2 cards but get +5 magicka, and then it also makes your opponent have -2 magicka. If you can tell, this is Cludes running away from the kingdom of Silvermoor. Silvermoor and Cludes are kind of at odds. Silvermoor bullies Cludes, and so Cludes, being a nomadic civilization, is always kind of on the run. So that's just a little background story for you when you're looking at the card artwork. Next, I run 2 copies of Successful Hunt. I do have 1 in the foil edition. This is probably the best card draw spell in the game, and maybe just simply the best card draw available in the game, especially when the library was available to use in the game. That was a very broken combination, but this allows you to draw a lot of cards based on what you have on the field and in your hand. Next, I do run 2 copies of Tribal Meeting, and this is awesome for initially springing your cards up. So I like to play this before I put Garment Maker out, because I can give a lot of attack and a little bit of health to all my Cludes battle cards, and then I bring Garment Maker out and it makes them all the more powerful. Next, I run 2 copies of Nomadic Lifestyle. This one is a tricky spell because there's a lot of things to do, but it simply increases your hand. You have to draw 2 cards. You have -3 magicka next turn, but it makes your battle cards cost cheaper this turn. So there's a lot that goes on with this, but this can really extend your turn. And if you play your cards right, you could actually not be too hurt by the -3 magicka for your next turn. And I do round it off with spells with 1 Telling of the Myths. I do remember doing the artwork for all these cards and being really happy with the turnout of this one in particular. And this is just simply a card to make your opponent have less magicka. In terms of tokens, I do not run many in this deck. I actually only run 3. So I only run 1 3 token. This was actually the first card I ever drew with my watercolor markers. So that's kind of fun to think. And this was the second one, I think, ironically, which is number 2, and I run 2 of those. And then in terms of sacreds, let's go ahead and move these piles back. I do run 1 Skylight Fountain because you definitely want to use that card when you can. Shual Waterfall just has 2,000 health, and it makes my battle cards cost -1. Local Armory. This one I think has a potential to be a really good sacred, but we just don't see a lot of people use it. I think the only knock against it is that it has 1,000 health. But I think if you're a Tanis Kingdom especially, this is really good. Or if you're able to silence your opponent like Cludes does, or even Furbish, you maybe can get value out of this sacred just enough to make it worth it. Next, I do use both Cludes sacreds, and obviously if you're playing the game, you're probably going to pick these. Travel Wagons, I've seen the best Cludes deck run this in phase 1, so you can immediately search for those cards that you want. And then because there are a lot of spells that you play that give you less magicka your next turn, this actually helps circumvent that and help you have plenty of magicka. And that is my Cludes deck profile. I want to thank you guys again for watching this. Let me know what you thought of this deck, if there's any modifications that you would make. Cludes, I would say, is definitely a top tier, S tier kingdom currently in the game, but with set 3 now out, I'm curious to see, or soon to be out, which kingdoms might override that. I do want to end this video with a Bible talk, and I want to speak out of the book of Lamentations, which is in the Old Testament. In the book of Lamentations, the writer is talking about how all of this bad stuff is happening to them, stuff that they themselves have caused, and then other things that people are doing to them. And all this bad stuff is going on, and the writer is talking about it, but then the writer says something along the lines of, in spite of all this bad stuff going on, I remember this one thing, or I know this one thing, and that's the fact who God is and what he means, like what he does for us and how he can help us and how he loves us and how he can save us and how he can forgive us and all those great things. And so as a reminder for me and for you, just know that in spite of how crazy life can be, how bad, or maybe even how good, no matter how bad you feel about yourself or if other people are doing things to you, just know that God, just know who God is. Know that there is that one thing, and that's God, who God is, and just what he does and what that means, and believing in him. Anything that I want you to know about is in the description box below, as well as in this little end card thingy. Whatever time of the day that you're watching this, whether it be the morning, evening, or night, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks.